But you cannot understand what happened after 1976 if you do not understand that the context for the students of 1976 and their readiness to do the radical and dramatic things that they were doing, if you don't think about what was happening on the campus from the late 1960s. So 1969, 1970 was when Steve Biko and the Black Consciousness Movement became part of the lives of student body. I told you that the thing called student politics really started in those years. And student politics as a factor in the struggle for freedom in South Africa began on all of the so-called Bush colleges, the black universities, university colleges, whatever names the government gave them, we called them Bush colleges. And to express the fact that we were literally thrown back in the bush of an inferior education, even though it posed as a proper education, a tertiary education level. It calls itself a university, but the mindset that they wanted to create was as far from a mindset of open, critical, free thinking, challenging questions, challenging systems, making connections between ideas and realities, seeing what is real and seeing what is fake. All of those questions, it was almost as if it was ideologically designed in the way that you were taught, in the people that you teach, that taught you, and in the things that they teach you, that those are questions that are carefully and designedly kept outside. And so what student politics did is they took those questions, and you could only do that through the freeing of your mind, taking the chains of your thinking, clarifying why you are here. You had no choice to come to this place. So while you are at this place, do you just accept it? Is there nothing else that you can imagine? And I suppose the word reimagining the Bush College, reimagining your place here, reimagining the reasons why you came. You came here because you had no choice. When you are here, is it possible to imagine that you actually came here to change this place? You came here because apartheid planning gave you no other avenue or option. Is it in fact possible to reimagine yourself in breaking down, dismantling all those apartheid plans? That happened through Black consciousness. You came here as a colored student. Black consciousness talked about our blackness and our solidarity as an oppressed community, and blackness as a state of mind, and blackness as a condition. And I used to say then blackness is a condition, yes, a condition of oppression, a condition of exclusion, a condition of marginalization. Can we reimagine that condition of oppressiveness to become a condition of resistance, of radical change, of transformation of your mind and of your thinking, of your ideas? Is it possible to say, okay, this is what they tell us to read, but I can read something else. Where do I find that? This is what they allow us to discuss in class. Can we find places to discuss other things? And so they give you to read, let's say, Professor Jacobus van der Merwe, right? But you can come together this afternoon or tonight and you can read Frans Fanon. You can slip Biko onto the campus, and Biko can mesmerize you with the clarity of his mind and the freedom of his thinking and the force of his personality and the beauty of his convictions. I mean, those were such opposite worlds, and that the students could embrace that. Now, all of that happened towards the end of the 1960s and the 1970s. And then if you have the good fortune to have lecturers like Adam Small and Jake Scharwell, Adam Small, who wrote that amazing essay that stands like a house even today. We are not here to exist for whites. We exist as black people. That was revolutionary for a generation that knew only that they were coloreds, that knew only that they were told that they were not as good as white people, but at least they were not as bad as black people. And it was reinforced in all sorts of things. And Biko spelled out to us, no, they give you these special privileges because they want to divide us. They give you these special things and they make you feel better than us because they are afraid that if we come together, we will overthrow them. Imagine what it would be if we could come together as the black oppressed masses of this country. What would it mean if we dismantle the apartheid thinking of our own minds? What would it mean if I say to all these people who are so proud of being colored, no, I'm not a colored, I am a black South African. And these are the reasons why. So that was mind-blowing stuff. And what the students did is they began to talk about that. And it first began with little things, little protests here and there, but then it became more serious. They were saying, this clothing code that you have here, the things that we must wear, jacket and tie and so forth. Why? Now, it looks like a little thing, but actually it is a big thing. There was a young man, a student here whose name escapes me, who was the symbol of that protest. But then, of course, the workers on the campus complained about low wages, and the students supported them and joined them. The workers go on strike, the students stay out of the classroom. When that begins to happen, think about when the students of the middle classes who can afford to be at a university, when they begin to see that our oppression is all the same oppression at different levels, and that we should not be aspiring to become one of the so-called privileged colored or black middle classes, separate from the aspirations of our people. As long as our people have battles to fight, we have something to fight for. And what happens to the workers happened to us, and it was not that difficult for them either on a practical level. Their parents were not all rich. Their parents battled. And so making those connections changed the atmosphere on the campus. Now the conversations with the white rector and the white administration would no longer be just about, but the library is too small, or where's the cafeteria, or we want better food. Now the conversation is, why do you treat the workers like slaves? That's a dynamic change right there. But that means that the workers brought the community onto the campus in a way that it never happened before. It brought the struggles of the community to the campus in a way that it never before. The students identified with that struggle. And so now the university all of a sudden have to deal not just with students isolated from the community complaining about little things like food and books and things like that, but students who are making common cause with the communities out there. That was a different kind of battle. So black consciousness made all of that possible. And so when the walk-off happened, part of the cry of that walk-off of 1973 under the leadership of Allan Boesak was, we've got to close down the doors of this apartheid child, they call it, not even an institution, this child of apartheid. That's another shift from just changing it to closing it down. Now they didn't succeed. The march, walk off of the campus were not the great success that everybody thought it should be. However, the consequences for the students in their minds, in their thinking, in their way of looking at things were enormous. That would never change. It planted seeds that would grow. And what would grow then would not be the bush around this campus. It would be the flowers of freedom that would begin to sprout. That is what happened to those seeds. And so by the time we get to 1976 and Soweto exploded, it was not a surprise for anybody that the students on this campus were saying, Soweto is us. And when 1976 happened, 2 weeks after Soweto, on the 12th of June, so a few days before Soweto, I got my doctor's degree in Kampen in the Netherlands. A week later, 2 weeks after Soweto, two weeks later, I came back home. When Soweto blew up, my friends in the Netherlands had said to me, you shouldn't go home. Look what is happening. You're walking into a situation that you have no idea. There's a war going on. And they offered me positions in congregation. I remember I was there for 6 years. I spoke Dutch fluently. I was frequently on television, on the radio, putting the case for South Africa. I had organized what they called the Club of 100, where we could get 100 people together who would give 100 guilders per month to build up a fund to get other black students like me to come and study at Kampen University and at the Free University. And it became a whole thing. You know, many of my colleagues who left after I had come back and even while I was there. So it was great. So everybody knew, and everybody said, and everybody knew what I was saying to the Dutch public about apartheid. I was in the middle of the battles to get the Reformed churches in the Netherlands to break ties with the white Dutch Reformed Church. So they told me it is not a wise thing for you to go back. But I was thinking, if there is a struggle, and if people are putting their lives on the line, young people, young like me, younger like me, I was in my 20s, what am I doing? Seeking the safety of a lovely little town in Holland, in a congregation that I would preach in every Sunday. They would love me, but I would speak in a foreign tongue. I would live in a foreign situation with my people far away, and that I couldn't. So I decided to come back. And 2 weeks after I came back here, at the end of July, beginning of August, the campus had just opened up. For some reason, the students found out about my work, and they came and they asked me whether I would speak. The cafeteria was a small place then, so it turned out that the cafeteria where they had planned to have this public meeting was too small for the students that turned up. And so they took a table and they put the table outside on the lawn, and I stood on the table and I spoke about the meaning of Soweto for this place. And I remember I had a leather jacket on, and I had my sticker, I'm black and I'm proud, on the side of my jacket. So that was my re-entry onto this campus and my reconnection with the students. But that was also the first time that I stood up in this country and spoke publicly about the political situation and told the students we should be part of this thing that started in Soweto. A few months later, I was asked to be the student chaplain at this university. By the end of the semester, I was ordained, brought back here as chaplain here, and at Technikon and at the Belleville Training College that were just up the road. And so 1976 ended on that note. But you remember, so between June 1976 and October or December or so 1976, no less than 139 young people were killed right here in the Western Cape. In that time, the first march ever to reach the gates of Parliament, with all the marches of the past, the first march ever to reach the gates of Parliament was a march organized by the students of Salt River High. Now, the youngest of those students were 13 years old. I connected with her just the other day. Miriam Gafoor was 13, and she was in high school. Rashid Omar, who is now Imam of Claremont Mosque, and now my great friend, he was one of the young student leaders at the time. Out of that action of the students, it became clear that the students of UWC could not stop with rallies and marches here. They had to join the larger student movement, and they did. So by the time we got to 1977, it is almost as if what had been happening from 1969 onwards, ideologically, that was the platform that was built upon which the students were now to enact all those things that they were talking about, all those ideas, all those ideals, and all those dreams and hopes began to happen there. So the 1970s and the 1980s, the end of the 1970s and the 1980s became the most important epoch of this university. I always say this. Jake Schervel used to refer to this university as the home of the left, and he was not wrong, but I refer to this university as the home of the revolution. When that 1976 revolution started and the revolution of the 1980s began, and the revolution was organized and mobilized and given direction and strength and purpose through United Democratic Front. Remember that from 1976 onwards, one student said to me, "Doc, but the fires were everywhere." I said, yes, but that was maybe the problem. How can we take all those fires that are here and there and everywhere and make them into one great fire? The UDF became that one great fire. So whatever happened, whether it was here on this campus or the campus of some high school here, or the campus of some school in the Verre Platteland, in the rural areas, anywhere in the country. And that was the other thing. I mustn't digress, but I think this is important. So the UDF brought all those small fires together into one fire. And so the government all of a sudden knew this was a different kind of animal. This was not going to be, oh, there is something there, I'm going to send my police force and I'm going to trap those kids and we'll make the savages quiet. That was not going to be like that. Here, they were dealing with what literally, politically, ideologically, purposefully was a united front. And that united front was something that they've never seen before. A united front with so many young people is something that they've never seen before. A united front was something that was not only burning in the cities like it was before. The ANC was a very urban-centered organization. The UDF brought in the rural areas in a way that we have never seen before. So the most conservative places in this country, children of the most conservative parents from the most conservative communities became the most radical revolutionary leaders in a decade. I mean, think about what that means. It caught them all off guard. And so this place, what made this place special? I was here as a chaplain between 1976 and 1986, when I moved to Belleville as the senior minister there. What I say here in this chapel was heard by the students on the campus. But because it was UWC, because it was apartheid's plan to have all the so-called colored students from across the country come only to one place, only one place. What I say here and what the students think here would 3 weeks later, when school holidays come, reverberate across so from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth, from here to Windhoek and Rehoboth in Namibia, and from Stutterheim to Bitterfontein, to Graafrenet, to Kakamas. Everybody who was here went away with a mind that was changed. And so all of a sudden, this place that was supposed to become the breeding ground of a new ideologically trained and colonized colored person became the place of a new mobilized, free, decolonized young mind, a revolutionary place. And they could take it everywhere, and they did. Now, so UWC, in that sense, more than the high schools, UWC, because of the power of what could go out of here to everybody else. I was in the church at the time. I became moderator in 1986. So I was in the mix of all of this, and I would be confronted by all these parents from the platteland. Dominee, wat doen jy met ons kinders? When I get invited to go and preach later on, in those platteland areas, take Middelburg for example. I went to Middelburg. It was a small little place, but Middelburg in the middle of the 80s became a hotbed of resistance. I was invited to that community and to preach in that church. Why? Because A.B. Visagi, who was a theology student here and went through the 1970s, became what he became the minister of Middelburg, Kaap. So what do you expect? And so when I get there, AB's community, AB's church, AB's the whole Middelburg, AB, all those young people were learning from AB what he found here and how he participated in. And when they threw him in jail and tortured him for so long, the community came up in resistance and in anger because he's our man. That is what UWC could do, and it is actually quite stunning. Now, so for that reason, the government was caught so off guard that when the UDF organized successfully the boycott of the tricameral parliament amongst the so-called colored communities, less than 18% of so-called colored people across the country even went to vote. So it was completely legitimized even before it got off the ground. They had to deal with that. Then they had to deal with this new mobilized, revolutionized youth. Then they had to deal with not just in Cape Town and Port Elizabeth and Johannesburg, but also in Kakamas and in Uppington and in those places in the platteland where they thought this would never happen. So think about it. If you can get 10,000 people marching down the street in Oudtshoorn, right down that hill. The idea was when they asked me to lead that march, Doc, we walk to the police station and we hand over the petition. So yeah, okay. But when we got there, the young people, when we got there, they says, no, the march is not over. I said, why? This is the police station. No, but down there is the army. We want to go to the army. Hell, this is 1985, 1986. It's a state of emergency. The police and the army are everywhere. They can kill you with impunity. They throw you in jail. They can do whatever they like. These kids, not being satisfied, because the police commander actually came out to accept it. He didn't send these boys to shoot at us. That victory was not enough. Nee. Hy gee ons die pinkie, ons gryp julle aan. It's in that sense, it was fun. But think about the enormous danger. That was such provocation that nothing further happened that day is a miracle. But so in those days, there was a lot of things that happened. So ask yourself, these students who became so involved, so how many students of this theological faculty served on the SRC? Lots of them. And generation after generation. How many of them became leaders in the struggle on the campus and outside. Lots of them. From this theology faculty. And so what happened to this theology faculty is that the students changed the whole purpose of this thing from an instrument of subservience to serve the theology of apartheid, to keep our people spiritually chained, to serve them the poison of the apartheid politics and the apartheid theology, and that otherworldly theology, that what you do in the church has got nothing to do with what is happening in the world. Out there is secular, it is unholy. You as a minister of the gospel, jy preek net die evangelie. En jy moet nie die mense die mekaar maak met ander goed nie. Los die politiek vir die politiek. That was the thing. And here you come from where I come from, Kakamas. And you would know that. I mean, I go back to Kakamas and I look at those copies, and it's almost as if I can smell the air of slavery still there. Our people, still today. And so you come here, and you know that not only is this the right theology because the Bible says so, because they say so, because if you think any other way, they'll kick you out. You'll never be what your dream is. Take that student, and all of a sudden that student becomes a member of a protesting community, a member of a revolutionary community, a leader in the struggle. Think of the enormous shift that goes on in the minds and in the thinking and in the ways of doing of young students. And so this place it was at the heart of what happened at UWC. And UWC in turn was at the heart of the revolution. And that is why I call this place the home of the revolution rather than the home of the left.